Hello. Hello. So, I wanted to talk about these kings, and queens that are mad because they're not your king. You know what I mean? Because they're not your king. And they think that they should be. They get mad. Some of these people even get it inscribed onto them. I've seen these kinds of people running around this place with queen or king and crowns tattooed on them. And then you say to them, well, who crowned you? Look, I crowned myself. And then you know what they are just from that. Most of the time, though, they don't need it written on them. You just know them by their fruits. And these are the kinds of people that would persecute Jesus Christ and laugh at Jesus Christ like he was nothing because he had nothing. They expected the Son of God. They would laugh at him and say he's not the Son of God because of how little he had. They expected the Son of God to be a king of worldly things, not realizing that this is Satan's kingdom. So Jesus Christ doesn't own worldly things. He's not rich in terms of the world. He's rich in terms of the spirit. And so Jesus Christ had nothing. He didn't own a house. He just walked with nothing. He didn't have a bunch of people following him. 12 disciples. Him and his 12 disciples. Now look at him. 2,000 years later, now look. That's all I got to say about that. But at the time, remember, 12 disciples. That's the king. That's God's son. God's son was a joke. Because to them, he was a joke to them. Because to these kings, what makes somebody valuable is how much they gained in terms of fame and wealth, rather than how much they gave. See, what makes a person valuable in God's kingdom is how much you give. In Satan's kingdom, what makes a person valuable is how much you gain, how much you take, how much you collect, how much money, how many numbers, how much this and this, And they're disgusting things. That's why God said in these days, good will be called evil, evil will be called good. Because that's exactly what it is. All these evil things makes a person of value now in this world. And it's disgusting. And people fall into these traps. People fall into the kingdom by this. So they have these idols. See, that's the second commandment there. Don't have idols. Don't worship idols. Looking at someone like they have some kind of authority because they have fame, or they have a certain amount of people following them around, or they have based on numbers, based on the height of numbers in these worldly things, these wealth, is the trap. And if you're following someone, if that's how you base your judgment on people, and something needs to be done. You need to pray on that and ask God to change your judgment and give you the sight to have the correct judgment of a person. Because these kings, like I said, they're not kings that you want to be under. They are little children. And because the way these kings judge, they think that everybody should be answering to them. So you see these things, and they'll be looking at something or someone that's under them, right? Someone that doesn't have all the riches that they have, all the worldly things that they have. And so in their mind, these people are lower than them. And so it's okay for them to treat them like dirt. It's okay to cast stones at these people based on those things in their mind. And when the children of God, when God's servants or God's children in God's kingdom say to the kings in Satan's kingdom, what are you doing? Stop doing that. Stop casting stones, I don't think it's right for you to cast stones at this person. They'll throw the biggest tantrum. It's like a child. Those with spiritual sight look at this like they're children who can't even walk. They can't walk. They cannot walk. God's on one side of the room saying, come on, come to me, come and walk. You got up, you walked. They're stumbling. They're still tripping up over the stones, causing them to be disobedient, behaving in the way they shouldn't behave, and then they get envious and angry because they can't do it. It's really sad when you really think about it. And so they start throwing a tantrum, and they'll look at you in a way like, they have this mindset where it's like, do you know who you are speaking to? That's like their mindset when they approach you. How dare you say this? You did not have my permission or authority. Like, that's how they come to you. I did not permit you saying this. Oh, you didn't have to permit, Like, what authority do you have? It's awful. It's an awful trap to be in. The people that have nothing in this world, the poor in terms of the world, are the richest in God's kingdom. And so we should always bear that in mind when we're coming across people. Now, people will be like, these kings and stuff, these kings of Satan, kings and queens of Satan's kingdom will go, these people are trash because I have more than them. That's how their mind operates. It's insane. I wanted to go over to Daniel. And those of you, or whoever you do or don't know the story of Daniel, I'll give you a bit of background. He was brought into Babylon. He was taken captive in Babylon. And there was a few of these kings. He was there for 70 years. Jeremiah prophesied that this would happen. And God's children would be taken captive under these kings for 70 years. And taken captive for 70 years. And after 70 years, this is because they committed, their own sins. But when they came to God, they still had to bear the punishment. But these kings, I want to get into these kings where there's a line of these kings that God had put in place. Remember, God is the overall authority. It's God that allows these kings to have these things. And the fact that these kings don't even recognize that is what is their downfall in this whole story. And there's Nebuchadnezzar, who, I am the king of gold. I am the king of all the land. I am the most king, I have all these riches. Everybody will be under my authority. In the end, he ended up being cast into the wilderness, running barefoot with nothing. And God warned him. God said, hey, if you don't humble yourself and accept that you are under me and follow my law, this is what's going to happen. And it happened. And And then there was Belshazzar, and this is the story of the writing on the wall. And this has just come to me, and I tell you about this guy. The same behavior, Same kind of behavior. And what he did is he took a bunch of cups, vessels, which from God's temple, and he filled them up with wine. Now, God hates drunkenness. God hates wine. And he filled them up with this wine, we're raising glasses to their gods, their idols, which is their money and their wealth. And then God found this an abomination, and so it didn't end well for him. So we're gonna go to Daniel 5:3, and it says that they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines drank in them, and they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver and brass and iron and wood and stone. Could you, really wrap your mind around that? So God takes you, puts you up, gives you all this stuff, and then you defile on him, you spit on him. That's what's happening here. And then 5:5. In the same hour came forth the fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. So they're all doing abominable things, they're mocking God. And then God's Spirit comes out and he writes something across the wall. And what happens is they're like, oh no, what does this writing say? He's like, I will give purple robes and a nice chain and stuff to the person that can interpret this writing. He couldn't understand what the writing said on the wall. And he was not feeling so good about that. Imagine sitting here and just seeing writing across your wall being written in. I mean, it's going to be pretty scary. That's the fear of God. That's the fear of God. And so he had all of his wise men, who worshiped false gods and idols and were not obedient, and they couldn't interpret it. Then they remembered Daniel from the king before him, Nebuchadnezzar, where Daniel would interpret the dreams of Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel explained what the dreams meant, that if he didn't humble himself, he will be cast into the wilderness, and it happened. And so they brought Daniel in. And I really want to read this and people to understand what happens here. So, this is Daniel 5:13. I skipped a bit, but this is where we're at. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spoke and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have even heard of thee, that the spirit of the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and the excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof, but they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee that thou canst make interpretation and dissolve doubts. Now, if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed in scarlet and have a chain of gold around thy neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, give thy rewards to another. See, this is not Daniel. One of God's people knows that these gifts that the king is offering means nothing. But then he said, Yet I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. O thou king, the most high God, gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom, majesty, and glory and honor. So Daniel is saying that God gave Nebuchadnezzar these things. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, languages trembled in fear before him, whom he would have slew, and whom he would have kept alive, and whom would he set up, and whom would he put down? But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with the grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven. So he knew that the Most High God ruled the kingdom of men. He cast him out. If you can't accept that God has authority, and humble yourself and accept that God has authority, you should be following God's commandments, you should be putting yourself into God, not behaving satanic, then you're going to get thrown out. And then he didn't listen. He got thrown out. Let's continue. And that he appointeth over it whomsoever he will. And thou his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, that though thou knewest all this. So it's like you've not even humbled yourself, and you know that these things happen. Like, you know that God did this to your dad, who was the king before you, yet, and you still are behaving. You've not learned from it, right? Not even learned from it. 5:23. But hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. Not good. And thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone. So they're drinking wine, and they're talking about, they're praising their gods, which is money as well. Oh, look at how much we have. This is, you can imagine the way this is. We're so great. We're above all. We have good worldly things. That's what's going on. Which see not, nor hear, nor know. And the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all in thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. So this is the writing that God then wrote in the wall. And this is the writing that was written. Min tekel parsin. And this is the interpretation thing. So min is God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances, and art found wanting. Pierce, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. This gives me goosebumps when I read this. It's scary. It's scary that, it really makes me even look at myself, like, am I, like the things I have, the things like I need to be doing more and more. Like, I cannot be in this situation of even desiring anything that beyond what I don't need. And if there's things that I have which are luxuries, like the internet or the phone, I've got to be using it for God's work. Because think of how many people behave like this today. They sit there counting their money that God allowed them to have. They wouldn't have that if it wasn't in God's will. And God says to them over and over, remember, that's me, but they don't hear it. They don't care. And look what happened to this king, the king of this satanic world. So this writing was written on the wall. And the interpretation, let me just read the interpretation on its own. God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Thou art weighed in the balances, and art found wanting. Thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. then commanded Belshazzar, which is the king, and they clothed Daniel in the scarlet and put the chain of gold around his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And in the night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So because, in this case, because this king thought he had more authority than God, that he lavished himself in these worldly riches, these things, and would spit on people below him. You know, there's a few of them like spitting on Daniel, one of God's children. Like Daniel is nothing, and Daniel would humble himself, very humble person, and he bared it. He bared this. These kings, these fake kings and queens, thinking they're like something. Like they think they're God's gift. They're not God's gift. God is using them for a testimony. And that testimony could be your testimony. So that you can see the things, and God uses them to reveal to you these kinds of things so that you can help yourself to not be that way. So that you yourself are not like that. You know what I mean? He shows these kings themselves and they refuse to see. Now, God already knows whose names are in the book of life and who's not. He knows who his children are and he knows who's not. He's beyond time. We're just experiencing it, going through it right now. So always remember that from God's point of view, he already knows. So these kings and these queens, they could be, Satan's kings and queens, they could be saved and turned around and be used as a testimony through themselves, or they simply could be just being used so the people around them see the disgusting behaviors and the people around them can humble themselves even more and be like, I don't want nothing to do with that, you know? Either way. Oh, the main point is you don't want to be that. You don't want the writing coming up on your wall. Say, you know, your kingdom is divided. You know, everything that you have had dominion over is divided and corrupt and disgusting, and now you're going to be slain. You don't want that. That is not a place that anybody wants to be. Whew. That story really scares me. Because that's how everybody acts today. Everybody acts this way today. You know, men will be lovers of themselves. And they all are. Oop. Let me pull that up. I'll get better. I don't know why this tool I'm using, it's there we go. It's a new tool. I guess I just have to work around it. Okay. So, who is wise? Okay, this is James 3:13, by the way. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy, self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not descend from above. It's earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, peaceful, gentle, willing to yield, full mercy and good fruits. Full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality, without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Hypocrisy is a big one that everybody needs to pull themselves out of. Some people, it's really bad. It's really bad. This is supposed to be a mirror. You know, it's supposed to be a mirror. Should always, when you're reading through the scriptures, you should always be in your mind wondering, do I do these behaviors? Are my behaviors doing these things? Know what I mean? If your behaviors are doing these things, if you see yourself doing these things, then you have to change. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Well, I want to continue a little bit with this, by the way. So, this is James 3, and we're going into James 4 now. 4:1. Where do wars and fights come from among you? So we're going to talk about here, where are these divisions, how do you get into these arguments with people, these wars, these fights among people? Where do they come from? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? That's literally envy. Envy. They start from the envy. You know? You coveting. Do not covet. 10th commandment. But that's where this starts from. The desires. Your desire. The lusts you have for things of this world. Because then when you see someone with something that you want, you get envious and you start persecuting, talking badly about them. And that's just the truth. That's just being real. That's the way it is. The Bible, it's real. It's the most realist stuff you will go through. Okay, so you lust and do not have. So it says, you know, they come for these arguments, these wars among you. They come from the desires for pleasure, the war of your members. You lust and do not have. You murder, you murder and covet and cannot obtain. That's breaking 2 of the commandments right there. Do not murder, do not covet. And this is why we need to follow this law. It's because of the evil. It comes from this. It is a tree. It's a tree planting an unfruitful, disgusting seed. And one thing comes for another, and it keeps growing and growing. It starts at envy. Lusting for things that somebody else's have, wanted to covet those things, so attacking them to put them below you. That's how this all works out. So you murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask amiss that you may spend it on your pleasures. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? So God is not going to give anybody anything here. This is what he's saying. You do not have these things because you do not ask. And people will just steal it and take it. But then when they do ask, they don't receive. You ask and you do not receive because you ask amiss that you may spend it on your pleasures. So you want to pray from God, and you want God to give you things that you could spend on these sinning, disgusting, worldly desires like the money and the riches, and that then causes more of a disgusting tree to grow, and Satan's kingdom of disgust. Because then they lose their humbleness. They think they're better than everyone else and starts going around in a big circle. You see how this goes? So he calls these people adulterers and adulteresses. Not because they're going around having physical sex outside of marriage. Okay? Because they are, you know how God says you cannot have two masters, because if you have two masters, you'll love one more than the other. This is what he's referring to as committing adultery here, because you are relating to things of the world. Well, not you, but I don't know who's watching this, but people that are in the world and are chasing this money and I want the big rich things and stuff, they are committing adultery against God, because then they're breaking the first commandment, which is have no other gods before God, but they make money their God. This is why in that story I read about the kings, they call gold and silver and iron and brass and wood and stuff, they call them the gods. The gods. They don't, gold is an object, but they're acting like it's a god. These things become gods. So then God says, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God, because now you're in Satan's kingdom. Or do you think that the scripture says in vain, the spirit who dwells in us yearns jealousy? But he who gives more grace therefore says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So these people that think they're kings, these people that they think have authority over other people, above God's authority, everything and everyone is under God's authority, but these people that don't remember that and think that people should be under their authority because, I have money, I have riches, I have a little bit of fame here and there, God will resist them. They're proud, and God gives grace to the humble. We continue. Therefore submit to God. Resist the devil, and he'll flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned into mourning, and your joy into gloom. These are types of people that will laugh at you. They do these little like mocking. They go on to their little group things, and they will mock you and laugh at you. A bunch of them, gang stalkers. They'll laugh at you like you're a joke because they think you're to be mocked. And if you're doing these things and they're laughing at you and mocking you because you're doing what God says you should do, then that laughter be turned into mourning and your joy to gloom. Just like these kings in Daniel's case. In Daniel's case, they're all high and mighty, right? Oh, look at all these riches. I am the one that... We are the gods of the gold and the silver. Woo. Let that laughter be turned to mourning and their joy to gloom. It doesn't last that long. Then he says, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. Humble yourselves, and you will be exalted above. Do not speak evil of one another, brethren. He who speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother speaks evil of the law and judges the law. So, don't go around say evil things. These people, these gang-stalking people, group together, children of Satan, and will do this. Like, oh, this person is this person is is this, and they don't have anything. We have everything. We're above them. Not good. It's not good. He who speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother speaks evil of the law and judges the law. Okay? So the one that's judging the brother is the one that is speaking evil of the law and judging the law. So these people, they're not actually judging the brother. They're judging the law by judging my brother, you know? Which is God's law to behave in a certain way. But you're actually, when you're angry at somebody under this law, you're actually speaking evil of the law, judging the law, and that's God's law, remember, that's God's law. And then it says, but if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. Again, these people judging the law, like they shouldn't follow it. But they could just behave however they want to behave and be evil people in Satan's kingdom. So they say, if you judge the law and you're not a doer of the law, but a judge, there is one lawgiver who is able to save and destroy. Who are you to judge another? Okay? One lawgiver who will save and destroy. So those that are judging the law should be scared. But if you judge the law and you're not a doer of the law, but a judge, and then he gets mad and says there is one lawgiver who's able to save and destroy, who are you to judge? Who are you to judge another? So this law, you don't want to be judging this law. You don't want to judge the law, and you don't want to be judging somebody that's under the law, but they will. These kings and queens of Satan, they hate it. They cannot stand people that are behaving. To me, it's simple behavior. It's simple, like, to just not be a bad person. Just don't be a bad person. Love God. Love God. Don't be a bad person. It's simple, but they don't. They don't. And say if you love God, go find out what God wants. Can people spend some time on that if they love Him? They say they're of God, but they don't know anything that God wants. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and spend a year there. Buy and sell or make profit. These people again, like, in the future, I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna have all this money, and I'm gonna be a great person in this world, make lots of profit here. And then he goes on to say, whereas you do not know that what will happen tomorrow. Now, you could be hit by a bus tomorrow. Then he says, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. If the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. This, having full faith in Him. It's having full faith in Him. Like it doesn't matter. Like, if you just have faith in Him, who cares? Why would you need to be sat here saying that I need to stir this and make a plan? I need to start collecting these worldly things, make this plan, and then I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna gain more money. Like, you could be dead tomorrow. Like, so 16. But now you boast in your arrogance. All boasting is evil. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is a sin. Yeah? 5:1. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming among you. It's talking about the rich. Your riches are corrupted, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days. Again, there's no point in collecting all these worldly things. Like, I'm gonna get like the best car and this and like it's gonna get destroyed. Like, and you just, the best treasure you can hold on to is eternal life. But they didn't do that. There was more riches, just worldly riches. 4. Indeed, the wages of laborers who have mowed your fields, which you kept back in fraud, cry out. Oh. So his laborers, God's laborers, who are pulling up the tares and wheat from the harvest. This gives me goosebumps. It's scary. Who are coming to harvest the wheat, his children, and the tares out of the field. Okay? His servants, God's servants, which you kept back by fraud, cry out. So people they're not being good to God's servants. They're being disgusting towards God's servants. And they cry out. Then he says, and the cries of the reapers have reached the ears of the lords of Sabaoth. You have lived on the earth in pleasure, luxury. You have fattened your hearts, as in the day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the just. He does not resist you. That's scary. You don't want to be one of these people. You don't want to be one of these people. He's saying, if you're one of those people that is sat here going, yeah, I'm just going to keep storing up money. This is literally the world. Think of the whole world doing these 9 to 5s, saying, I'm going to keep taking the 9 to 5 money so I can store it up and buy more riches in the future. And then eventually I will have a big mansion and all these riches so we can be kings of this world. This is literally, everybody does this. Not everybody. It's just about everybody I know. Not everybody I know, but most people I've known do this. Be patient and persevering. Okay, therefore, be patient, brethren. Okay. Until the coming of the Lord, see how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth. Wait patiently for it until it receives the earth and latter rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. This is a warning to the brethren, Christians, to us. This is like us. Establish your hearts. Do not grumble against each other, brethren, because you may be condemned. This is how Satan works. He wants to divide and makes you to grumble against each other so you can be condemned. So you will have your brotherhood, your sisterhood, brotherhood, and Satan will come in to try and create division within that, to try and tear you apart so that you are attacking your brother, you know? to try to get you to attack your brother. So they may come in there. As an example, Satan may come in and they will say they would come to you. So one of Satan's workers, laborers, because remember, Satan copies God's kingdom, so Satan has his laborers, and their laborers' work is to come into you and say, oh, you know that your brother said this about you, and, you know, gossip about them, and then they'll remove themselves from you, and then they'll go to the brother, and they'll go to the brother and go, hey, you know your sister, or your other brother, and they're talking about you to them, said this about you. And they start doing these games. This is Satan's work. Disgusting. Disgusting. And then even to the point, when they can't do that, they'll then go spread all kinds of disgusting things. And the naive people who are under, this is why I say people need to watch out for these kings and rulers. The naive people, Satan's kings and rulers. I gotta keep putting that in. The naive will under that authority will just quickly believe that, like, oh, these people are of God, because Satan presents himself as an angel of light, remember, but they're not of God. Just look at their works, their fruits. Look at the things they're doing. That's why God says, know them by their fruits. If their fruits are disgusting and vile, then you know everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie, because they are of their father, who is the father of lies, who's a murderer from the beginning. Okay, indeed we count them blessed who endure. You have heard the perseverance of Job. Do not grumble against each other, brethren, you should be condemned. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. My brethren, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of the suffering and his patience. Remember, all the prophets were killed, right? So these prophets were had threats to their lives constantly. Killed. And that's what's going to happen to us. They're going to kill us. They are going to kill us. So don't fall for the trap, because do not be scared of death. Death has no authority. To sin is death. Don't let that become have a godly God over you. The God of death means nothing. Most High God. Stick with him to the end of this world, and you'll be good. Indeed, we count them blessed who endure. You have heard the perseverance of Job. Job went through everything, and Satan could do nothing. He could do nothing. Satan going up to God, like, God's like, hey, Satan, where have you been? Satan's like, oh, I've just been going to and fro the earth, looking for who I will devour. And Job looks very tasty. And God's like, try it. Like, Job, there's nothing you could do to Job that would make him worship you. So go ahead. And Satan tried everything. Destroyed his family, killed all his family, made him sick, ruined his life, and he didn't budge. That's how you're supposed to be. So, you have heard the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by God, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. But above all, my brethren, do not swear, either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, lest you fall into judgment. Be swearing by heaven or earth or any other oath. But let your yes be yes or your no be no. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Say what you mean and mean what you say. You shouldn't have to, you shouldn't have to prove yourself. You shouldn't have to swear on anything anyway. You just prove yourself by your actions. Prove yourself by your actions. Don't just say it. Your yes is yes, your no is your no. You just do it. You just do it. See, what comes out of a man's mouth means nothing. It means nothing if their actions are hypocritical to what they say. So, anyway, wow, 50 minutes? 50 minutes! I've been talking for 50 minutes. Very good if you made it to the end of this, because Satan has people's attention spans less than the memory of a goldfish. Less than the memory of a goldfish. It's bad. It's bad. Anyway, good luck, God bless, and let's keep going. Just keep going. Don't let these satanic kings and queens be your kings and queens. Let God be your king. Jesus Christ be your king. Right? And you're all good. You're all good. Amen.